Welcome, everyone. I know we're waiting for people to enter the Zoom room, so we'll wait a couple of seconds. I see that numbers are going up. Many people are joining. Thank you for that. And as always, we are very excited to see friendly faces, people that have been joining us on a weekly basis, as well as new people. We see new names coming up, so thank you. Welcome to everyone who's new to this webinar series. So this time we want to start, as we start the webinar again, we want to use most of the time to answer your questions. But before we go there, because we do have many new people, we wanted to share a 2-minute video that we posted last year on our website. Some of you may have seen it, for others it might be new. And I think it's a nice video to just explain the trial in less than 2 minutes. So Molly, if you wanted to share that, we can get started with the video. It should come up in 1 second. So thank you. Sorry, I see we have this week. Last week it worked great, obviously. Oh, okay.
The fight against ALS, the first ever ALS platform trial, designed to accelerate the development of effective and breakthrough treatments for people with ALS. So what's different about the Healy ALS platform trial? Instead of testing just one drug, the Healy ALS platform trial evaluates multiple treatments at the same time. This means more opportunities to find groundbreaking therapies in a faster time frame. Imagine having to build a new dock every time a different ship came to port with new treatment cargo. This is how traditional trials work. In platform trials, there is one dock to receive all the cargo and connect the treatments to their final destinations. Central infrastructure can be shared among therapies. And because different treatments are tested using a common master protocol, placebo data can be shared. In other words, patients have a far greater chance of receiving active treatment than in traditional trials. The Healy ALS platform trial will begin with 3 drugs selected by an expert evaluation committee. While therapy assignment to patients is random, each drug has an equal chance of success based on scientific evidence reviewed by the researchers. More drugs will be added soon. The trial will operate across a network of more than 50 coordinated sites nationwide, working as a team, increasing access for patients. More data, faster results, lower chance of placebo, breakthrough progress. ALS doesn't wait, and neither can we. The Healy ALS platform trial is enrolling now. We will continue to test new treatments. We will increase patient access to potentially life-changing therapies. We will drive the development of new biomarkers until we find a cure for all people with ALS.
Thank you for the video. And so we posted it last summer, and it's amazing to see how far we have come. So earlier this week, as you may have seen, we announced that we passed 50% enrollment for the first 3 drugs. So those are the first 3 drugs that, as you have seen in the video, were launched last year. So if we can start with the slide deck, we can provide a few more updates. So again, we are at over 50% enrollment for the first 3 drugs, but we already added a 4th, which is great. So the idea of the master protocol concept and the platform trial is that we can continue to add drugs as they become available. So we have these 4 drugs right now in the platform: zilucoplan, verdiperstat, CNM-Au8, as well as pridopidine that was added more recently, and we are working on adding regimen number 5 and 6 next. If you can go to the next slide. as you've seen on the video, we selected 54 sites to start the trial. At this time, we have 47 that are actively enrolling, and the list is on the next slide. You can also get all this information on our website, and the ones in blue are the ones that were activated since last week. It takes different times for different sites to be activated for a number of reasons. Many of these universities were really shut down in 2020 because of COVID in terms of research, and that's why it took us a little bit longer to activate them. So again, we're working towards activating all 54 soon, and then we are already selecting new sites to be added on top of the additional of the initial number of sites that that was initially selected. So if you can go to the next slide. Again, because we want to take most of the time for your questions today, I don't have the time to go through all the description of all the scientific features of the trial. We'll try to answer, as we do every week, every questions. But if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. We have Catherine and Alison, our amazing patient navigators. They're always available to answer your questions at that phone and email address that you can see on the slide. So if you can go to the next slide. I also want to mention that we continue to provide weekly updates, and that's the webinar you are attending right now. We record and post the links as well as the slides, and we also had a recent webinar series about the science and the mechanism of action of each of the first 4 drugs that are in the platform trial. You can view all the recordings. We had the scientists and representatives from the different companies presenting their data. And so those webinars were very informative, and you can find them on our website. Also, we are planning a series of other webinars to explain specific topics based on submissions and requests that we got from so many of you. So we will work on them shortly so that we can sort of alternate and have these weekly updates, but also alternate with topics such as statistics or other things that you asked about, over the next few weeks. And so with that, I think I'm going to stop here in terms of our presentation, and I'm going to start with your questions. And I'm so glad that Dr. Merit Cudkowicz, the PI and sponsor of the trial, is on the line with us to answer your questions.
Great to be here.
So let's start here in order. Has Regimen 3 shown any positive results yet?
So we don't have any results yet of the first 3 regimens. So because we started enrolling in July, and we're, as you heard from Sabrina, we're halfway through enrollment. We won't have the results until we're finished with enrollment, and the last person who enrolls in one of those first 3 regimens finishes 6 months. So we're, if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, I wouldn't be surprised if we would have been done with enrollment already by now. But it's still enrolling really well. And I just want to thank all of you on the call who are part of the study and other people, because that's the way we're going to get the answers.
Exactly. So the next question, do you see any limitations regarding the type of ALS treatments that can utilize the platform model?
In the big picture, no, it's a really good question. I think that we could really take all types of treatments as long as they have a good rationale for ALS in any mode of administration. For example, in our current 4 regimens, there's 2 that are taken by mouth. Actually 3 that are taken by mouth. One's a capsule, one's a liquid, one's a tablet, and another that's a shot under the skin. And then the 5th one's going to be intravenous. So there's no restrictions there. I'd say that the only area where it might not make sense to be in this particular platform trial would be maybe for a gene therapy or a targeted treatment for a genetic form of the illness or for a small subset of the illness. And in fact, I'm happy to share that we're starting to gather a think tank about forming the second platform trial here, perhaps in the C9 form of ALS. So we're just starting to get a group together to think about that.
That's great news. Question about diagnosis. I was diagnosed in October 2019, and in hindsight, I recall having had the initial symptoms as early as 2017. Will I still be disqualified from the platform trial given the 36-month cutoff?
So I think here it'll be really important to talk to your neurologist or one of the site neurologists. So we define for trials onset as the date of the first weakness, whether that's in speech or hands or foot. And we realize that that might not be the exact onset of the disease, but it's a kind of a concrete one. And for that, so if your first sign of weakness was in the fall of 2017, then yes, you would not be eligible for this trial. And the reason we do that is we look at all different types of cutoffs, and we're trying to get the smallest size group where we can get a clear answer. And if we took, for example, people 4 years from first symptom or 5 years, we could do that. It's just we'd have to enroll so many more people, and it would take much longer to get an answer for everybody. But as you know, from being, all of you have been on here, we're also trying to develop a parallel expanded access program so that people who are not eligible for the HEALEY platform trial would have other options. And we're making great progress on that.
Great. I want to take a question that was submitted to Catherine, previously our patient navigator. So again, feel free to submit questions during the week ahead of the webinar. Could you discuss why the COVID vaccines were able to be fast-tracked and made available rapidly, whereas experimental treatments for ALS seem so slow in comparison?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I hope that the rapidity that we see in COVID can be implemented in illnesses like ALS. So there's a couple differences, but there are some similarities that are important. One is that the COVID vaccines were not approved until they had data on efficacy and safety in tens of thousands of people. So even though they were approved very fast, they still had to show efficacy and safety. But nevertheless, once they did that, they got emergency use authorization, obviously because there was a global pandemic. We don't have something like that in ALS, but you could see, like, if there was, maybe one or more of these treatments in the platform trial was hugely positive and safe, that there might be a process or maybe some changes in the FDA so that one could get it on the market faster.
Great.
So hopefully that COVID will help pave pathways for other illnesses.
Yeah, another FDA question. If a drug is found to be successful in the trial, the platform trial, will another phase of the trial be required by the FDA?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It completely depends on the results of the trial. So typically the FDA and all actually regulatory agencies in Europe and Canada, they typically require 2 positive trials. However, there is an exception policy at the FDA that if there's a very robust single study, and it would so robust that it would be unethical to do another study, it can be approved on a single study. So for the definition of robust, there's nothing in writing about what that definition is, but what I've heard is that it would mean that all the outcome measures you look at, whether it's breathing, strength, ALSFRS, they all are positive, and that the statistical significance is very high. So it's not just borderline, but it's really robust, and we haven't had something like that in ALS yet, but I'm certainly hoping that one of these drugs in the platform trial or one of the drugs in the other ongoing trials might hit that.
Yeah, another question about sort of the speed of the drug development for ALS. There's a question about when will ALS patients get access to effective medicines, to the ones that we are testing in the platform trial. And the comment is that because most ALS patients only live 2 to 5 years, speedy results are imperative. Yeah,
I think, the platform trial is faster than any ever trial in ALS. I think there has to be some time period to tell if a drug works or not. So I'll just say historically, trials in ALS used to be 12 or 18 months. Some of the first riluzole studies were 18 months. With really feedback from patients, we have been advocating for a long time for shorter studies. And the good news is that the FDA does accept 6-month studies. So could we get it shorter? We would love to get it shorter, but the challenge for any progressive illness like ALS is sometimes you need a little bit of time to see if your drug works or not. So the platform trial is the shortest efficacy trial, and one that, again, at the end of, when we're done enrolling the first 3, we're going to have the results of 3 drugs at the same time. And people in the trial will be on those open label extensions, and our goal would be to continue those for anything that's positive.
Right. Moving on to a different topic, can you please elaborate on the progress in the expanded access program?
Yeah, so we have commitments from Biohaven, which is regimen B, from Clean, which is regimen C, and from Prolenia, which is regimen D, for small expanded access programs. And so we have pretty much done with the design of B and C, and we're working on D. And we're hoping that the first one will be in April, I hope. The Biohaven one will be at Mass General, Duke, and Northwestern. Where the Clean one will be at in Florida, Holy Cross and Barrows, and we hopefully add maybe another site. And we're still working out where the Perennial one will be. But we are trying. I mean, our long-term goal is all 54 centers will be offering expanded access, but we're kind of building towards that.
Yep. There's another question. Somebody is asking two questions in one. The first is whether patients are accepted in Georgia. Maybe I can take that. Yes, in Georgia, we have one site, Emory University. So again, you can find the list of sites and the contact information so that you can, from our website, you can directly contact the sites, or please call Catherine so that she can connect you. The other question, Merit, is are patients with bulbar palsy onset accepted in the trial?
Yes. So people with bulbar onset are absolutely accepted. If someone only has bulbar onset and absolutely nothing in their arms or legs by EMG or clinical exam, then they might not be eligible for this study. But again, they would be eligible for expanded access programs and perhaps some other trials.
Great. And there's a positive comment in the chat. Thank you for the positive comment, and especially about the positive comments about the weekly webinars. So that's really appreciated. And maybe talking about that, Mary, can you tell us more about the topics we're considering for more webinars, and maybe how people can submit requests for more webinars?
Sure. First of all, we love them too. It's really a good opportunity. I wish we'd all be actually together, but this is our new togetherness in Zoom. But we learn a lot too, and so thank you for all coming. We're going to do a statistical series, and hopefully that's not a turnoff to anyone. But for our statisticians are super excited about this because they're in it for the same reason everybody else is in it. They want to find effective treatments in ALS. So we've asked them to put a mini series of things that we're hearing questions about, like, why do we need a placebo group? When can we get rid of a placebo group? What are the pros and cons of using historical controls? Why, when someone goes into open label, can we not let them know what they were on during the double blind? So some of these key questions. And so they're going to prepare those, and my best guess is those will be kind of late April, May mini series. But we're open to any suggestions. I know IMALS did a survey of about 900 people and got topics, and so we've been looking at those. We just got them this week, and we'll try to pull some of those ideas to this webinar.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the positive messages you're writing in the chat. There's a question, a clarification about which regimens are going to be in the expanded access program. And specifically, there's a question about Zilucoplan.
Yeah, since I might turf that back to Dr. Paganoni, since she's leading that expanded access program.
Yeah, so we discussed that with the company, and at this time, it's their policy of the larger company that basically they don't support EAPs when they're still doing the testing. However, they definitely are supportive of the idea of expanded access program right away as soon as the efficacy results are known. So I think hopefully if the results are positive of the Zilucoplan regimen, we could see an EAP very soon, right after the results are known, which should be later this year. And this question also was asked during the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we have a recorded webinar series with each of the companies. So feel free to go to our website and you can see the recording and you can hear from the company directly. Essentially, the same question was asked. There's a question about a few things about sites. So one question is about Yale University, if Yale could be added to the program. And there's also other questions about whether other sites might be coming on board, especially on the West Coast. So perhaps you can comment on new sites.
Sure. So, there's a longstanding Harvard-Yale competition, and I swear that is not why they're not in. So we did just recently ask all the rest of the Niels centers. So there's 135 Niels centers, and only 54 are in it. we asked anyone else if they wanted to apply, and we have 31 applications, and I believe Yale is one of them. So we're actually, I think, selecting sites in the next couple of days. Now, from the time you select a site and when they're active can take a couple months. We're going, of that list that we're going to pick, we're going to try to pick as many as we think have the staffing and the ability to do this and do this well, because we want to make it easy for all of you to be able to get to a site close to you. And I think we're going to try to fast track some of them so that we can maybe get maybe, let's say, 10 sites up in the next 2 months. And the rest would be probably coming in when we add regimen 5 and 6.
Great. So our patient navigators have been getting different versions of the same question over the last couple of weeks, and it's about the open label extension, which is when basically people who complete the double blind can receive active drug. And the question is, how can a participant decide whether to go into the open label extension or not, since at that time they have to make the decision, they will not know the overall results of the trial.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I wish there was a simple answer. There really isn't. I'd say first is the science and the enthusiasm about the drug is just as good 6 months later as now. So we really wanted to give it to people as an option, knowing that 75% of people were on the drug during the double blind, but not everybody. And we wanted to be able to offer that. The reason we can't let people know, and this was really an FDA request from us, was because in a way you can use the data from the open label extension as a second study. And as you heard before, I mentioned that the FDA usually likes 2 studies for approval. So what you can learn from the open label extension is longer term safety. And you can also look to see if starting the drug 6 months later, you still get an effect, or is there an advantage to taking it 6 months earlier? So you can still learn a whole lot, but if you tell people what you're on, you can't use any of that data for FDA approval. And we really want to use everything that we can in case, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them are positive, so that it can count as a single study. So we realize it's really hard, but I think there's nothing that's changed about the science and the rationale for the drug. And we are monitoring safety. So if the open label is available, it means that there has been no safety issue identified that would make that unethical.
Yeah, and I know someone is asking what tools or materials are available to assist patients to make that decision. And I would say that, the first thing is to talk with your physician and the investigator at your site. And specifically, I know this question comes from one of our participants. So please flag me, pin me down next time you're here, and I'll make sure to spend as much time as needed to talk to you about this. There's also a question, is Washington University in St. Louis a center? Yes, it is.
Yes.
And there's another question about how long would the EAP last?
So at the moment, we're designing them to be a year. Again, people don't have to be in an EAP for the year, but at least a year. And with the thought, again, that we would have results on the main trial in that time period. And then obviously, if the results were positive, we'd be advocating to continue the EAP and probably to broaden it for other people.
Yeah, there's one more question about the platform trial, and then before we wrap up, I want to take questions about a different drug. The question about PMA, not ALS. Is PMA, the diagnosis of PMA included in trials, and will it ever be included in ALS trials?
So you're absolutely right that it tends not to be in ALS, and that's really from a lack of understanding whether the biology is the same or not. I think the day that we understand that better, if the biology is the same, then I think people with PMA would be included. And again, I think expanded access is exactly a type of option for people with PMA. I do want to say that the Healy Platform Trial is not the only way to get expanded access. Expanded access can be something you discuss with your neurologist, and they can approach any company that has an active phase 2 or later trial about expanded access for you. Sometimes patients say, the companies say yes, sometimes they don't say yes, but if you don't ask, you'll definitely not an option.
Yeah, couple more questions. The last couple of questions we'll take about the platform. If one more than one regimen shows efficacy, can you do combination studies, or will we do combination studies?
I hope so. I mean, that is the beauty of the platform trial, that you can adapt, and that's exactly what was done in different oncology platform trials. That anything that was positive became, the base, the kind of core for all the other future regimens. So yes, that's the goal.
Will companies provide open label to those participating if and when the drug gets approved?
So if we have a positive drug, then it is anticipated that that companies will provide this on an expanded access until marketing. Once it's on the market, then they wouldn't do that, because then we'd be prescribing it.
There's another question about diagnostic groups. We just spoke about PMA, and now the new question is about PLS, a different form of motor neuron disease. Is PLS included in ALS studies?
No, PLS is not, for the same reason as PMA, that we don't know if the biology is different. But I'm very excited to say that there's a PLS network that's been created, that Sabrina is one of the leaders of, with Dr. Mitsumoto, Columbia, and many, many other people, to try to start trials for PLS.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I know before we end, I know there's a question, not so much about the platform trial, but there's a question about AMX 35. And the question is there any update from the FDA regarding AMX 35? And so I think, again, we keep the community posted as soon as we have information. You may have seen there was a recent press release earlier this week about the regulatory advice from Canada. And I think we're still waiting for the FDA, but we hope to be able to provide feedback over the next few weeks. So let's definitely keep in touch. And again, we continue to have these updates weekly. So as soon as we have, final decisions, we'll communicate them.
And please let us know about any other topics. We can bring other people, so it's not just Sabrina and myself to come and talk and answer questions.
Yeah, and before we end, thank you for sending a nice note about the webinars. I think we calculated we answered over 500 questions, I think, since we started on the weekly webinars, plus we had the science webinars, etc. So again, really great to be able to connect with the community on a weekly basis.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
See you next week. Bye.